Wild looking gig.
Chinese are spy plane!
Ooh, that was hot. It landed in between my glasses and my face.
45
Nice.
ACP. Is it God's caliber or Boomer ordnance? John Moses Browning developed the cartridge for the Auto Colt pistol in 1904. Now you might be thinking, that's really old, as you clutch your double stack 9mm Luger, the modern choice for handguns, developed by George Luger in 1901. Who's Boomer now? To be fair, 45 ACP is just an updated 45 Colt, which was developed in 1857. So with the announcement of the EP45 by X-Star, they're offering a different take on the EP9 with a slower moving, larger bullet, and something the market hasn't seen yet, a UMP45 for the pores. You might be asking, do we need a UMP45 for the pores? What kind of stupid question is that? Let's start with the EP9. It's a lightweight AR-style Glock Mag 9mm carbine, and in my review I found it reliable, a great shooter, and an absolute bargain at just $450. Shooting it back-to-back with a Scorpion and Streebog, it held up great in performance, but its non-folding stock and incompatibility with aftermarket folders made it less stowable and therefore less ideal for a backpack gun. To the untrained eye, the EP45 looks nearly identical, with familiar toolless, removable muzzle device, which is hand-tight, a polymer handguard with M-LOK, AR layout and controls, and this monstrosity. It looks like a giant Nerf dart. The following program is rated G. Now before you give X-Star crap for not sticking it to the man, slap whatever you want on there. I'm not your mom. Or am I? X-Star believes their pistols do not violate the new flavor of tyranny, aka the updated brace rules, and you can still buy the brace separately, but for now it's less trouble with FFLs and customers to ship it without. So on their listing, it's Nerf or nothing. Talk to your representatives. I went ahead and ran the EP45 with and without a brace, so I could provide impressions on both. AR triggers, safeties, and grips should be compatible, so it's just an EP9 that takes Glock 21 mags. Or is it? It's not. Now I understand the EP pistols are not the most exciting in their base form, so for the rest of the review, I'm going to be running a second one that has a suppressor, a weapon light with a pad, an optic, a folding charging handle, a low capacity mag, and a brace, which I think looks pretty sweet altogether. Recoil system is still straight blowback, which is predictable. Rather uninclusive, but because the average grain of 45 ACP is double that of 9mm with more powder to boot, they've had to offset this with a heavier spring and buffer and a beefier bolt that now extends into the upper channel for the charge handle. A downside of this is that the handle now reciprocates where the EP9 doesn't, but it also means they can offer a larger folding charging handle separately because of the strength afforded by the direct connection to the bolt, which also means it's not compatible with the EP9 because small bolt. The EP9 is right around 4 pounds, and the EP45 gains just under a pound with the changes I mentioned. The barrel thread is now 5/8 by 24 rather than 1/2 by 28, which is worth noting because most 45 cans will have a .578 by 28 thread. Speaking of cans, this is a Lone Wolf Eliminator modular suppressor in 45. Special thanks to Lone Wolf for sending me out their newly designed 5/8 by 24 end cap super fast for this video. Now I know this is going to be the biggest area of contention, so let's just get into it. Why 45? Because they don't make 46? Yuck! No, really, why? And before you go crazy in the comments with what looks like a binary hate crime or a DDoS attack, 1010101010, just know I'm not going to make a performance argument for or against 45 in this video. Now, those of you who have followed X-Star for a while know that the company's original plan back in 2014 was 2 models, one in 45 ACP and the other in 10mm, but capital restrictions turned them towards 9mm instead, with the intent to return to 45 and 10 once they built up the business. Now, I can still hear the 10mm fans groaning, "You picked the wrong one!" But as my buddy Graham Bates puts it, 10mm is like Rumble. Everybody posts about it, but nobody uses it. I'm kidding. I hope Rumble does great. I really do. It should be great for the gun community, and I'm on their 12 spies. Shameless plug. XStar's reasoning is this, and I'm paraphrasing. 45 ACP is a proven cartridge with a long military and agency service history, and it's enjoyed extensive use in Glock handguns. And that just resonates with people. What's been lacking are practical and reliable companion firearms in a PDW format that can accept those Glock 21 mags. Now, we could talk about ammo for years, and I really don't wanna, so here's my quick take. 5.7 is soft shooting, has awesome velocity, it's still pretty expensive, and has limited availability. 10mm, good power, ballistics, a tad more expensive than 45, but still cheaper than 5.7. 40 Smith & Wesson, well, you might as well go 10mm, it has the same diameter, and we're in a PDW format. 45 is huge, usually subsonic, it has low penetration, and it's around double the cost of 9mm. 12 Spies, funny, clever, rants, CGI hair. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment, it helps me out. It puts fuel in the algorithm tank, and it fills up my heart. Now, this is usually where I'd say this episode is brought to you by XStar USA, as they are the main channel sponsor, but I don't want my impressions or opinions to be overshadowed or tainted by a shill label, so they're not sponsoring this episode, I assure you. Now, they did send out the ammo necessary for the review, and because they saw how Graham Bates does his What's for Dinner segment, testing a wide variety of ammo types, they included 9 different types for this review, which I think is pretty brilliant. Speaking of which, Graham Bates ran a wider variety of ammo in his review, so if you don't see a particular type that you're interested in here, like Plus P, which XStar hasn't explicitly said is compatible, they said you might have to do a heavier buffer, make sure to go check out his review. Check out his review either way. The other thousands of rounds that I've put through XStar guns were graciously provided by the ammo sponsor of this channel, Global Ordnance. Big thanks to them, they rock, and also make sure to check out my links, that helps me out. My website, Patreon, and merch should be up soon. They might be up by the time this review is up. Go check it out. So we know why XStar chose the 45, but why should you? Because despite stopping power, 9mm benefits over 45 in cost, capacity, concealability, availability, penetration, recoil, follow-up speed, and according to surgeons, their wounds are indistinguishable from one another. That's part of why those service weapons switched to 9mm. But to be fair, half of those benefits relate to handguns, not as much PDWs. When a magazine's weight and packaging is supported by a larger platform, you don't notice it nearly as much, even if that mag is twice as heavy. Likewise, recoil and follow-up speed can be improved by spreading out recoil across more contact points, and a 6.5-inch barrel will improve ballistics of 45. But that also goes for 9mm. And UMP 45s are cool. Now, worth noting, HK doesn't even sell the UMP 45 to civilians. They sell a civilian version, which is called the USC 45, which features a 16-inch barrel and a non-folding stock. Most people don't even know what the USC is. If I say UMP 45, I'm kind of talking about the entire scale, whether it's the USC or the UMP, just to be clear. So at the range, with and without the brace, the result was very interesting and very fun. First up, no brace. Do you shoulder it? Do you sling press it? If you had AR pistols before this became a thing, you're probably laughing. Again, contact your representatives. Now, I mainly shouldered it, and that provided the most stability, but I was a bit hunched over. A cheek weld on top of my collarbone or in that pocket worked well too, as long as I pushed down with my cheek or my chin, and it was less hunched forward, but the recoil impulse provided less stability on follow-up shots. Now, that recoil impulse of the EP9 was a bit of a pulsing gallop, but it was still soft, predictable, and it returned on target. The EP45 is just more. It's still soft and predictable, softer than I expected, but the gallop is more defined with the heavier bolt, and for that reason, I do not recommend just slinging it. The brace is nice. It does sit in the pocket of your shoulder rather than the buffer sitting in there, which gives you better alignment, better cheek weld, and just makes it easier to use overall. Big surprise. XStar does make a stocks adapter now, so if you want to SBR it, you can put whatever mil-spec stock on there you want, and I will say a full stock and a vertical foregrip would look awesome on this. Now, that was the interesting part, but posture aside, the heavier weight, heavier bolt, and big burly 45 mags kind of make the EP9 feel like a 22. And I think that's my favorite part. It's like a hairy-chested, beefier EP9 that drinks straight bourbon and shoots around, usually associated with a more powerful and somewhat rowdy gun, but in a controlled manner, and it's just more fun for that reason. The familiar controls make mag changes a breeze, the grip is very comfortable, it has a good texture and a good angle, the trigger is crisp with a pretty short and very mechanical reset, but I will note the EP9's feels tighter and it measured lighter. Now I'm happy to report that it chewed through everything. Defensive, range, steel, whether through the included 13 round Glock 21 mag, which did not like to drop free, the 24 round SGM tactical mag, which has a spring pulled off the suspension of a Ram 2500, or this 1 round ETS mag, which is clear and looks awesome, and it worked great. Suppressed was great, no cycling issues, and it tamed the gun quite a bit while looking awesome. Now, there are some downsides, like a bit of blowback out of the ejection port, which I really only noticed in video playback, and then there were some eventual misfeeds caused by fouling, carbon buildup. This was after 500 rounds, more than half of which were suppressed, and I went in and cleaned the feed ramps and it fed perfectly after that. So I don't really count it as a ding against reliability, more just a maintenance note if you decide to run a can. All right, some closing thoughts. Between 9mm and this, I think it's really gonna come down to preference. And there are definitely people who just prefer 45, just like people who will always choose an F-150, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great that X-Star is providing an option in this market that's populated with stuff mostly over $1,500. You got the UMP-45, the Kriss Vector, the CMMG Banshee, the B&T APC-45, the LWRC SMG-45. And then there's the High Point, which is only $150 cheaper than this. I don't know any other options that are $800 or below that are still in production, but I think this would make a great bump in the night gun. If it was suppressed with a good defensive round, it's gonna hit hard, have low penetration, and it's gonna be reliable for $500. Now, could they have picked a better round? Sure, everybody's got their preference. But I think this reinforced platform over the EP9 is gonna make a much easier transition if they decide to do a different higher pressure cartridge. What cartridge is that? I don't know. Tell me in the comments below and why it should be 10mm. I'm just kidding. But seriously, what should they do next? Thanks for watching, and remember that politicians can't save us. They're not gonna legislate our lives back into prosperity, especially now that we've seen the pitfalls of a two-party system. The next election, it's not gonna determine whether our culture continues to backslide into a dystopia dictated by one's feelings. We have to start making those changes in our families, in how we raise our kids in our communities, how we treat one another, and in the general public with our own involvement. We need to start insisting on a turn back to biblical values. Elect Jesus back into our lives. This country was founded on that, and it's the only reason we've prospered in the first place. And the only way we can do that is to do it yourself every day with a sense of confidence and an unapologetic boldness. I'm not crazy for thinking that life is precious or that this world wasn't an accident, and yet we have backed off from the public square of discussion so that we don't offend anyone. And what further proof do we need? I'm filming an update now, because less than 30 miles away from here, someone went into a Christian school and murdered 6 people, 3 of which were children, and somehow we're split as a nation about what to be more outraged about. The fact that 3 children were murdered in cold blood, and 3 adults, or that they misgendered the killer on the news, calling this person a martyr and saying, this is what happens when you don't accept us. Let's have a visibility day and a vengeance day. Look, this goes beyond mental illness. This is demonic evil, all right? To call it anything else is to allow it in your midst. Don't invite it, don't wink at it, don't flirt with it. Rather, invite people to church. Easter, I'm not trying to get into a debate whether it's celebrating a pagan god. It's one of the few times you can get people in a church that don't usually go, next to Christmas. Invite people to church. He is risen. I love you guys.
Okay. I'll time you. Here.
I got it.
Nope. Double. Get some quick reaction time, boy.